Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be we're exploring a YouTube video on strong luck today. And what's so interesting about this video is it connects the concept of luck to brain science.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just some like mystical thing.
Right.
The video argues that anyone can cultivate this strong luck by achieving a specific brain state that they call mental vigorous.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to dive deep into that today and see what we can learn from this.
I'm excited.
Me too. So to start off, the video makes a pretty bold claim about the processing power of our brains.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What's that?
It says that our brains are like as powerful as 100,000 computers.
Wow.
Which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, that's a lot of processing power.
It is, and it's like worth over $150 million in computing power.
Wow.
It really highlights the potential we all have.
That's amazing.
It is, right?
Yeah.
It makes you think twice about all those times you don't feel like a supercomputer.
Right.
But they use an example that I thought was really relatable.
Okay.
They talk about how we memorize phone numbers without much effort.
Yeah.
Like we can easily remember 10 or 11 digits. And that speaks to the inherent power of our brains.
Yeah, no matter how we might have done in school or anything like that.
Exactly. Everyone has this incredible brain power.
Right.
But then the question is, how does this translate to mental vigorous?
Right.
And ultimately to this strong luck they're talking.
Yeah, how do we tap into that?
Right.
Well, the video defines mental vigorous as a state where your thoughts, the images you create in your mind and your emotions are all positive.
Okay, so it's like more than just positive thinking.
Exactly.
It's like this deeper alignment.
Yeah, it's all got to be working together.
Wow.
And they say this is the key mental state of really successful individuals.
So it's like those people who just seem to attract success effortlessly. They have this positive outlook.
Yeah.
They see challenges as opportunities.
Right.
And they just have this like incredible energy that repels them forward.
Like they're always on.
They are.
Yeah.
But is it really just a mindset or is there something more to it?
Well, that's where the video gets really interesting.
Okay.
It starts talking about specific hormones.
Okay.
Particularly beta endorphin.
Okay.
P,
Okay.
which is phenylethylamine.
Okay.
And dopamine.
Dopamine I've heard of.
Yeah, and these all become very active in a mental vigorous state.
So these are like the brain chemicals of success.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into the brain chemistry.
All right, well, let's start with beta endorphin and PE.
Okay.
The video actually refers to them as brain morphine and brain narcotics.
Woo!
Which I know sounds kind of intense.
It does.
But it highlights their effects on stress and pleasure.
Okay.
So these hormones actually help individuals thrive under pressure
Okay.
by converting stress into a source of pleasure.
Wait, stress into pleasure? How is that even possible?
Right. It seems counterintuitive because we think of stress as always a bad thing.
Right.
But the video emphasizes there's a difference between passive stress,
Okay.
which is detrimental,
Okay.
and active self-managed stress.
So like the difference between being chased by a lion
Exactly.
and choosing to run a marathon.
Yes, perfect example.
Okay, both are stressful.
Yeah, but one's a controlled challenge.
Right, and that can actually enhance focus and performance?
Right, so in a mental vigorous state, these hormones are basically reframing stress,
Okay.
turning it into this positive driving force.
That makes sense when you think about those extreme athletes.
Yes.
Or people who just thrive in high-pressure situations.
Exactly. They're not just coping with pressure, they're actually seeking it out.
Because their brain chemistry is wired to find pleasure in it.
Exactly. That's a key characteristic of this mental vigorous state.
That's so fascinating.
It is, right?
Yeah. And what about PE? I remember you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, PU.
And they talked about it being linked to attraction, right?
Right. They said it's released during attraction.
Okay.
They even called it love's drug at one point.
Interesting.
Which suggests that your mindset even impacts your social interactions.
So if you're going into a situation feeling negative or scared.
Yeah, it's going to be a totally different experience
Hormonally.
than if you're feeling confident and enthusiastic.
It makes you wonder if mental vigorous people have like an advantage in social situations.
It's possible, right?
Yeah, because their brain chemistry and this positive outlook
Yeah.
might make them more charismatic or engaging.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
The video didn't specifically say that,
Okay.
but it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's move on to dopamine.
Okay, dopamine, the feel-good chemical.
Right, everyone always talks about dopamine being about pleasure and reward.
Uh-huh.
But this video highlighted its impact on what they call the A10 nerve.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
So this nerve pathway is super important for motivation,
Okay.
for action,
Uh-huh.
judgment, willpower, imagination, even creativity.
Wow, so dopamine is not just about feeling good.
No, it's about getting things done.
It's like the fuel that turns those good feelings into action.
Exactly. And they actually showed a visual of this A10 pathway in the video.
Oh, wow.
It runs from the brainstem all through these different parts of the brain.
Okay.
And it shows how widespread the impact is.
So when dopamine flows along this pathway,
It's like your whole brain is just lit up,
it's ready to go.
ready to perform.
So more dopamine means better memory-enhanced learning,
Uh-huh.
just like better brain activity overall.
It's like the key ingredient to unlocking our full potential.
It sounds like it, but how do we actually trigger this dopamine release?
Right.
How do we get to that mental vigorous state and create this strong luck?
Well, according to the video, it all starts with understanding the power of the right brain.
Okay, now we're getting into left brain versus right brain.
We are.
I've heard about this, but I'm curious to hear how they tie it to this whole strong luck concept.
Yeah, so you've probably heard the left brain being associated with logic and analysis,
Uh-huh.
and the right brain is more about intuition, imagery, emotions.
Okay.
And the video really emphasizes that the right brain has a stronger connection to what they call the IRA.
The IRA.
Yes, which stands for Instinct Reflex Area.
Okay.
And this area includes the brainstem and the limbic system,
Okay.
which control our primal instincts and emotions.
So the right brain is like the direct line to our gut feelings and emotional responses.
Exactly.
That makes sense considering it's all about creativity and intuition.
Right, and here's the key.
Okay.
The right brain's ability to create images and visualizations
Uh-huh.
can actually influence the IRA,
Okay.
triggering the release of those important hormones we talked about.
Wait, so you're saying just by imagining something vividly,
Yes.
we can influence our brain chemistry
Uh-huh.
and trigger the release of those performance-enhancing hormones?
That's exactly what the video is suggesting.
That's almost like a superpower.
It is kind of a superpower.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to the fact that our brains often can't distinguish between a vivid imagination
Okay.
and a real experience.
So when you imagine success,
Yeah.
and you really feel it like it's happening,
You're essentially tricking your IRA into that mental, vigorous state.
that's mind-blowing.
It is, right.
Yeah. Is there an example in the video that illustrates this?
Yeah, they use the example of imagining eating a sour plum.
Okay.
Just thinking about it can make your mouth water.
Yeah.
That's your brain reacting as if you were actually experiencing the sourness.
Wow, that's a great example.
It is, right.
Yeah, so if we apply this to setting goals,
Uh-huh.
are you saying that visualizing a goal as already achieved
Yes.
can actually help us figure out the steps to get there
Can.
and even eliminate self-doubt?
Exactly. It's like giving your brain a roadmap to success.
Wow.
While also giving it that motivational boost.
By triggering those hormones?
Exactly.
That's amazing. But there's got to be more to it, right?
There is one more piece to this puzzle.
Okay.
The amygdala.
Okay, the amygdala, I always hear about it when people talk about emotions.
It's a key player.
So what's its role in all of this?
Well, the amygdala is this small almond-shaped structure
Okay.
within the IRA,
Uh-huh.
and it acts as a kind of gatekeeper for your emotions.
It's like a little bouncer in our
I
brains.
like that.
Yeah, deciding what emotions are allowed into the party.
Exactly, and here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
When the amygdala sees something as unpleasant,
Okay.
it triggers the release of stress hormones,
Uh-huh.
which leads to negative feelings,
Okay.
and that can hinder our progress towards that mental vigorous state.
So if we want to achieve mental vigorous and unlock that strong luck,
Yeah,
we need to make sure our amygdala is giving us a lot of yes votes.
you could say that.
But how do we influence its judgment?
Right, is it just positive thinking?
Yeah, or is there a more nuanced approach?
That's a great question, and the video delves into that in the next section.
Okay, I'm ready for part 2.
Let's do it. So we were talking about the amygdala and how it judges things.
Right, like a little bouncer in our brains.
Exactly, and the video goes on to say that our past experiences,
Okay,
especially negative ones, can actually condition the amygdala
okay.
to make more negative judgments.
Oh no, so like our past baggage is literally affecting our brain chemistry.
It can, yeah, and it can make it harder to achieve that mental, vigorous state.
That's kind of discouraging.
Yeah, but the video does provide a framework for understanding this.
Okay,
And potentially overcoming those challenges.
okay. I mean,
So they use the example of children.
okay.
You know, kids typically start with a naturally mental, vigorous mindset.
Right, they think anything is possible.
Exactly, but then as they grow older,
Yeah.
they get societal feedback and experience failures.
Mhm.
And that can chip away at that belief system.
So their amygdala starts learning that some things are unsafe or impossible.
Right, and that shapes their future judgments and actions.
That makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah, it's like our brains become crystallized based on our past experiences.
And those experiences dictate how we react to new situations.
Even if those reactions aren't serving us anymore.
Right, but is there a way to uncrystallize our thinking?
That's where the video introduces this concept of remind imagery.
Okay, remind imagery.
Yeah, it's a technique that claims to reprogram the amygdala.
Interesting, and shift us towards a mental vigorous state.
Exactly. It's about intentionally creating new positive associations.
Okay, to override those old limiting beliefs.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does this remind imagery thing work?
Well, it's a three-step process.
Okay.
And it starts by remembering a time when you were already in a mental vigorous state.
Okay.
So it could be a moment of personal triumph.
Okay.
Or just a time when you felt really confident or genuinely happy.
So anything that brings back those positive emotions.
Yes, anything that evokes that empowered mindset.
It's like we're priming our brains for success.
Exactly.
By revisiting a time when we were already operating at our peak.
Right. And then the second step is to take that positive energy and project it onto your future views.
Okay.
So you vividly imagine yourself achieving those goals. You feel the emotions associated with that success.
So step one is to relive a peak moment.
Yes.
And step two is to project that feeling onto our future aspirations.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the third step?
The third step is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
You start layering in these positive emotions onto your visualization.
Okay.
So emotions like gratitude, responsibility, and the value you want to create through achieving your goals.
So it's not just picturing the success, it's about feeling it.
Yes, and aligning those feelings with your core values.
It's like creating a powerful emotional cocktail that rewires our brains for success.
I like that analogy.
It's potent stuff.
It is, and the video emphasizes that this goes beyond just visualization.
Okay.
It's about consciously shaping our emotional landscape to align with our goals.
So it's like we're hacking our brain chemistry.
Exactly.
To support our aspirations.
Right, and it makes you wonder if this is something that successful people and happy couples do naturally.
Like they've intuitively figured out how to tap into remind imagery without even realizing it.
It's possible. Yeah, the video mentions that a lot of successful people and thriving couples seem to naturally employ aspects of this technique.
So it's like we're not just learning a new technique, we're uncovering a hidden mechanism behind success and happiness.
It's like they're giving us the user manual to our supercomputer brains.
That's a great way to put it, but I'm also curious about practical applications.
Okay.
Does the video give any examples of how remind imagery has been used to achieve real results?
Yes, they do.
Okay, tell me more.
The speaker actually shares a personal anecdote
Oh, okay.
about using this technique to overcome a challenging period in their marriage.
Oh, wow.
They were feeling disconnected from their partner,
Uh-huh.
and their thoughts were spiraling into negativity.
Okay.
So they used remind imagery to reconnect with the positive feelings they had
Uh-huh.
in the early days of their relationship.
Wow, so they shifted their mindset back to a place of love and appreciation.
Exactly.
That's a powerful example.
It is, right?
Yeah, and if it can work for something as complex as a relationship,
Yeah.
it seems like it could be applied to almost any area of life.
It's about recognizing that we have more agency than we think.
Right.
We're not just victims of our circumstances.
We can actually shape our reality.
Exactly. Mental vigorous and remind imagery give us a framework for taking control of our mental and emotional states.
And shaping our experiences in a more deliberate way?
Yes, but I know what you're thinking.
What am I thinking?
This sounds a little too good to be true.
Well, yeah, part of me is a little skeptical.
That's understandable.
Is there any scientific evidence to back this up?
That's a great question.
Or is it all just anecdotal?
The video doesn't go too deep into the research, but it does mention a few key areas where science is starting to catch up.
Okay, tell me more.
One area they talk about is neuroplasticity,
Okay, I've heard of that.
which has revolutionized our understanding of the brain.
Yeah, for a long time, people thought our brains were fixed after a certain age.
Right, but now we know that they're constantly changing and adapting.
So even if our past experiences have created some negative pathways, we can create new, more positive ones.
Exactly, through conscious effort and techniques like remind imagery.
So we're not just stuck with the wiring we were born with.
No, we have the power to change our brain.
And rewire ourselves for success and happiness.
That's the exciting part.
It really is. So remind imagery is like a practical application of neuroplasticity.
You could say that.
By focusing on positive experiences and emotions, we're strengthening those neural pathways.
Exactly.
And creating a more optimistic and resilient brain.
You got it.
That's incredible. But are there any potential downsides to all this?
That's a good question.
Like, could there be unintended consequences of messing with our brain chemistry?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
The video doesn't really address any downsides.
Okay.
But I think it's important to be aware that our brains are complex.
Right.
And we're still learning about the long-term effects of these practices.
So we should proceed with caution.
I think that's wise.
Yeah, and listen to our own bodies and intuitions
Yes, absolutely.
as we explore these techniques.
Right, and it's important to remember that this isn't a quick fix.
Okay.
It takes consistent effort
Right.
and a real commitment to changing your thought patterns.
So we can't just listen to this video and expect our lives to magically transform.
Or I wish it were that easy.
It would be nice, though.
It would.
But it sounds like it requires a more mindful and intentional approach.
It does. It's like developing any new skill.
Okay.
It takes practice and patience.
So it's not just about having a few moments of positivity.
No, it's about cultivating a more enduring, positive mindset.
And rewashing our brains for lasting change.
Exactly. And another thing to keep in mind is that everyone's brain is different.
Right.
So what works for one person might not work for another.
So it's important to experiment and find what works best for you.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
To personal growth and transformation.
Right. We each have our own path to mental vigorous.
And strong luck.
That's right.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has been fascinating.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how our brains work.
It's amazing what we're learning about the brain these days.
It is, and it's so empowering to realize that we have the power to influence our thoughts and emotions and ultimately shape our destinies.
It's a powerful message.
It is. Before we wrap up, though, there was one more thing that really intrigued me.
What's that?
They mentioned that this idea of strong luck and the techniques for achieving it are rooted in ancient Japanese wisdom traditions.
Oh, right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. The video mentions that these concepts have been practiced in Japan for centuries.
Wow.
Often passed down as a kind of folk wisdom.
So these ideas that are now being validated by science
Yeah.
have been a part of human experience for a long time.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you wonder if there's something timeless and universal about these principles.
Maybe there's a deep wisdom within us that we're just starting to rediscover.
Through the lens of modern science.
Exactly.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this topic.
There's so much more to explore.
Definitely so much more to discover.
It's an exciting time to be learning about the brain
It really is.
and the potential of human consciousness.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree.
Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
I hope you found it as fascinating and insightful as I have.
I have, for sure.
And to our listener, remember, you have the power to create your own strong luck.
Yes, you do.
By cultivating that mental, vigorous state.
That's right.
Go out there and start rewiring your brain for greatness.
Until next time.
So I'm curious, is there anything else in the video about how science is starting to validate these ideas?
Yeah, actually, they bring up a couple of interesting things. One is the concept of mirror neurons.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those. Aren't those the neurons that fire when we do something and also when we watch someone else do the same thing?
Exactly.
That's so cool.
It is, and the video suggests that mirror neurons might be why visualizing success can actually trigger those same pathways in our brain.
So it's like we're experiencing it even though we're just imagining it.
Right, and that's why watching someone else achieve a goal can be so inspiring.
Yeah, it's like our brain gets a little taste of that success.
Exactly, it's like a vicarious experience.
I love that.
And they also mention the field of epigenetics.
Okay.
Which is all about how our environment and lifestyle choices can actually influence gene expression.
So like our genes aren't necessarily our destiny.
Right, we have more power than we realize.
To shape our own well-being, even at a genetic level.
Exactly, and that ties back to this whole idea of mental vigorous and creating strong luck.
Okay.
If our thoughts and emotions can influence our biology, then cultivating a positive mindset and using techniques like remind imagery
could have a huge impact.
It could. It's like we're not just programming our minds for success, we're programming our entire biology.
For a healthier and more fulfilling life.
Exactly. It's not just about external goals anymore.
Right.
It's about optimizing our whole system for a more vibrant existence.
This is also fascinating. This deep dive has really given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
And a lot of new tools to experiment with.
It's really exciting to see how much we're learning about the brain these days.
It is, and I think one of the most valuable takeaways for me is this realization that we have so much more agency than we often believe.
We really do.
We're not just passive recipients of our circumstances.
We have the power to shape our reality.
And that's a really empowering message.
It is. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
But remembering that we can change our minds and rewire our brains for success.
It's incredibly liberating.
It really is. It's like they say.
What do they say?
The only limits are the ones we set for ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
And with techniques like mental vigorous and remind imagery, we can break free from those limitations.
And tap into a world of possibilities.
That's right.
Well, I'm feeling inspired and ready to create some strong luck of my own.
Me too. It sounds like you're ready to rewire your brain for greatness.
I am. This has been such an incredible conversation.
It has. I've really enjoyed exploring these ideas with you.
Me too. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
My pleasure.
It's been a real game changer for me.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And to our listeners, remember the power is within you.
It is.
To shape your own reality.
That's right.
Go out there and embrace that incredible potential.
Until next time.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.